does seem that hope is fading. Of the hopes of finding those 5 people aboard the Titan sub are really looking very grim at this stage. Let's bring in Craig Lambinon of the NSRI here in South Africa. Craig, the news just coming through is that they found this debris field, which, and I think I made a mistake in thinking it was on the ocean surface. It is in fact near the wreck of the Titanic, in the vicinity of the Titanic. Obviously, there's a lot of debris down there from the Titanic itself. The fact that they flagged this, does this suggest perhaps the worst-case scenario to you?
Yeah, so the worst and maybe the best case, because understandably, in these kinds of situations, the family are hoping for any kind of information that's going to give them an indication that their loved ones have at least been found. Sometimes in the sad circumstances that we may be finding out, it does nonetheless still aid the family with some closure. We are aware that this is breaking news. We are aware that there is the US Coast Guard who are leading the search operation. They're going to give a briefing in a short while, which will lead us to hear more about what it is actually that they are saying. And then, as you say, there are still questions. Is this some of the debris being found on the ocean floor? Is some of that debris being found on the surface? We're aware that as much as the undersea operation has been continuing, that surface sea search hasn't stopped since Monday, because every snowstone is being left unturned. We're also aware of the massive response from the global community, from other countries bringing whatever resources they can to assist in this search operation. We are hopeful that there is going to be some closure for the family. I suppose we can't deny any other hope at this stage until we've got this briefing from the US Coast Guard. But it does appear that this may be a catastrophic, something catastrophic has happened. And that might be what we're hearing now.
And of course, you know, the authorities are very clear that this is still a search and rescue mission. Until it is deemed a search and recovery, it will stay with the active hope that perhaps there's some sign of life. But presuming, and of course it is not absolutely confirmed yet, but presuming the debris that is found in the vicinity of the wreckage of the Titanic is indeed of the sub that went down to the wreck on Sunday, it does seem possible that it fits into one of 2 theories that I've heard. So the first theory I heard is that there is a possibility that as its emergency procedures, this sub would have simply naturally raised to the surface, and then it was simply finding it on the surface, bearing in mind that the people were literally bolted in to the structure, wouldn't have been able to get out of themselves. They're still looking on the surface, as you've made clear. If indeed this is the debris from the Titan, my understanding, and this is where I'm going to need your expertise, is that at that depth, the pressure from all that water at nearly 4 kilometers is immense. If there was any leakage or damage to the hull or any water going into the hull, it would have just crumpled it and destroyed it like a tin can. Am I understanding it correctly, Craig?
Unfortunately, any kind of a breach of that craft at that depth, there would be an implosion. There's no other way to put it. And the implosion would be catastrophic. So you know, no difference to an aircraft at 30,000 feet, where there's some kind of a loss of pressure. You know, for those 2 pressures to equalize, the difference underwater is that that pressure is being compressed on that vehicle, and as they've said, at something like 200 tons or something like that, the pressure on that actual vehicle at that depth. So yes, definitely any kind of a breach. And then was it breached by fault or was it manually breached? That's going to be something that the investigators will eventually get to the bottom of.
Yeah, and it's going to be a difficult one either way because, you know, the CEO himself was on board that sub. And there were questions, especially in the last few days, that have been raised. This was pretty much a bespoke vehicle. Nothing has ever really gone this deep for a tourist capacity, is my understanding. It is a dangerous mission. It was always a fairly dangerous thing to do. Are there any specific lessons, or is it just the age-old lesson that the sea can be a very dangerous place and we should always respect it?
Well, that without a doubt. You know, if we think just from our perspective, you're looking for someone in the surf line who's gone missing in a suspected drowning accident, and the person isn't found for days, sometimes weeks. Yeah, you're 4 kilometers underwater. Naval commanders have been coming forward, naval and submarine commanders have been coming forward, saying they've never been to that depth, but they're a naval submarine commander. Yeah, you've got a remote vehicle put together by off-the-shelf parts, from what we understand, at a depth with civilians that most other people in the world, no one else really in the world has ever gone to. And a search operation at that depth in itself, half a kilometer underwater, is already a long shot. Now you're close to 4 kilometers underwater. It's an extremely difficult scenario. But notwithstanding any of that, in any rescue operation, first and foremostly, the families involved are brought together in the most compassionate and caring way, that they are obviously kept 100% up to speed of how the rescue operation is progressing, and they will be brought into the fold of how complicated specifically this rescue operation was. And it's unprecedented. You know, if we look at just in recent history, the likes of that cave rescue in Thailand, MH370, the French airliner that went missing off the Atlantic as well. Those are extremely complex search operations, not necessarily rescue operations, because it is just so remote. The area that they're looking at is so remote and so uninhabited by anything, really.
Yeah, that's true. And we do tend to forget how very vast our oceans are. Craig Lambinon, thank you so much for coming through to chat to us at this moment that we're hearing that a debris field has been found in the vicinity of the wreck of the Titanic. And it does suggest potentially that could be what is left of the submarine. But we are expecting in about the next 2 hours, I think, an official address from the US Coast Guard. So hopefully more information then about what has happened with the Titan. Craig Lambinon, of course, from our National Sea Rescue Institute. Stay with us. We've got your sport.